States, Spike Cohen.
Thank you. Thank you. I haven't seen you all in minutes. Thank you so much for coming. Who's ready to take the power back? Who is ready to end this crony, corrupt, bloated system that Republicans and Democrats have created together for the sole purpose of taking from you to give to the billionaires that put them in office? Who's ready to take that power back? Who here is ready to build a future for your children and their children and their children that will be freer and happier and safer and healthier than anything that we could currently have? Who is ready to take every single bit of the power and the wealth and the freedom that they've stolen from you and put it back in your hands where it always belonged? Who is ready to take the power back? Folks, that's why Joe and I are running for president and vice president. That's why we have people running up and down the ballot here in Georgia and across the country. Because Joe and I and the Libertarian Party recognize that the American people do best when we are free. We have seen what the Republicans and Democrats have done with their exclusive control of every lever of power and government in this country for over 160 years. We see what they've done with that control. They've used it to rob you of your power. They've used it to rob you of your freedom, and of course, they've used it to rob you of your money. Why? So that they can enrich themselves and the well-heeled, politically connected billionaire cronies who have bought and paid for them to be in office. Folks, we know we're never going to get what we need from the people who created this mess. We know that the best way for us to live our lives is when we are the most free. We know that the best way for us to move forward is to take that power and that freedom and that wealth back, to take that control back, and to live our lives as we see fit without all of those barriers and burdens that they put in place. That's why we're libertarians, and that's why we're voting for Joe Jorgensen. That's right. Who here is sick and tired of watching their loved ones, their neighbors, maybe even yourselves, sign up to protect and defend the Constitution and the American people from all enemies, foreign and domestic, only to be sent overseas by those domestic enemies to fight and kill and possibly die for the benefit of military contractors and central bankers and foreign dictators? Who's sick of that? And who here is sick and tired of watching those veterans, if they're fortunate enough not to come home in a flag-draped casket, often coming home with PTSD and traumatic brain injuries and other health issues, and being subjected to the absolute worst form of health care in this country, the Veterans Administration? Who here is sick and tired of watching the cost of living, everything from health care to housing to higher education, spiraling out of control because of the Federal Reserve and other disastrous Republican monetary policies? Who here is sick and tired of watching entire industries flee, not just here in Georgia, but around the country, and either go overseas or just go out of business because Republicans and Democrats and their cronies figured out that they could profit even more off your back if they made it increasingly unaffordable to do business in America and to hire you, the American people? Who here is sick and tired of watching people's lives being destroyed, entire communities being decimated because of this failed, disastrous, racist war on drugs? Who here is sick and tired of watching our friends, that's right, who here is sick and tired of watching our friends and our neighbors and loved ones and possibly even ourselves being brutalized by an increasingly militarized and increasingly unaccountable police state? And who here is sick and tired of watching that same militarized police state tell you what weapons you should be allowed to protect yourselves and your loved ones and your communities while they go and buy whatever military equipment they want and stick you with a bill for it? And folks, who here is sick and tired of being told whether or not you're essential, whether or not you should be able to get cancer screening at a hospital, whether or not you should be allowed to go to church, whether or not you should be allowed to get therapy for your addiction or your depression or whatever other issues you're facing, whether or not you should be allowed to work, whether or not you should be allowed to run your small business to feed your family and your loved ones, whether or not you should be able to return to some sense of normalcy, whether or not you should be allowed to do anything in your life, being told to stay home until further notice and being handed $1,200 of your own money and then being robbed to give trillions of dollars to multinational, multi-billion-dollar corporations? Who here is sick and tired of being in the worst recession of our lives at a time that stock prices are at or above all-time highs? Who here is sick and tired of this thieving, murderous system and the pandering, craven politicians who built it? Folks, that's why we're running. That's why Joe and I are running. That's why libertarians are running across the country. Because we know that the last people that we can trust to get us out of this are the people who put us into it. We know we're not just running to be a third party. We're not just running to be a lesser of three evils instead of two. We're not just running to give you another set of politicians to vote for. We're running for real change, for real people. We're running to end the Fed and to end the IRS and to end the ATF and to end the DEA and to end the war on drugs, to end the wars overseas, to end this disgusting system that they built and put the power back in your hands. That's why we're voting Libertarian. That is why we are voting for Joe Jorgensen. And folks, let's be very clear. Let's be very clear. The outcomes we're facing right now are not unintended consequences that we couldn't have possibly known were going to happen. This party has been saying for the 49 years that we have existed that this is what would happen. We have been saying that these policies would lead to these outcomes. We knew it and they knew it, and they did it anyway because they want you to be in a desperate situation. They want you to be anxious. They want you to be scared. They want you not to know where your next paycheck is going to come from or whether or not your retirement is secure. They want you not to know whether or not you're going to be able to pay your mortgage or your rent. They want you to be resentful. They want you at each other's throats. They want you fighting each other in the streets. They want you to be hopeless. And they want to break your spirit. Because if they can make you hopeless, and if your spirit can be broken, then it's that much easier to convince you that all you need to do is give them the rest of your power. All you need to do is let them take the rest of your money. All you need to do is let them take total control of every single aspect of your life. Then you'll be safe. Then you'll be healthy. Then you'll be happy. Then you won't have a single thing to worry about. Well, folks, we know that the last people that we can trust to get us out of the mess that we're in are the very people and the very parties and the very policies that put us in that mess to begin with. We know that the only way that the American people can get out of that is for us to be free. We know that the politicians took our power and they screwed everything up because half of them have never worked a day in their lives in a real job or running a real business. They've spent their entire lives telling you how to live their lives while their own lives are a mess. And we know that the way for us to live better is to put the power back in your hands where it always belonged. That is what we are running on. That is what the Libertarian Party is about. Folks, Joe and I, well, before I talk about Joe, to be fair, by the way, who watched that debate, the two debates, the VP debate and the presidential debate a few days ago? Who watched that? Show of applause. I'm so sorry. I'm very sorry. Thoughts and prayers to all of you. We're gonna get through this. Let's talk about the folks that were on those debate stage for a moment. Let's talk for a moment about the people asking you to throw your vote away. Let's talk for a moment about Joe Biden. Oh, you've heard of him. Name a policy you hate. The war on drugs, the endless wars overseas, the war on guns, the 1994 crime bill, civil asset forfeiture, no-knock raids, the war on terrorism. Name something you hate from government that has happened in the last 50 years, and Joe Biden has either helped write it, helped sponsor it, helped vote for it into law, or helped oversee its enforcement during the 8 years that he was in office. Joe Biden is the architect of every bad policy to come out of DC for the nearly 50 years that he has been there when he's not sniffing children or forgetting what his name is. Joe Biden, how fitting that one of the architects of the militarized police state would choose as his running mate one of its most brutal enforcers. Let's talk for a moment about Kamala Harris, who has the distinction of putting more people away in cages for victimless crimes at the state level than any other person alive. Let's talk about a prosecutor who, at least twice that we know of, intentionally withheld exonerating evidence in a capital murder case. Let me say that again. We know of at least 2 times that Kamala Harris was trying to have someone executed, that she had evidence that they didn't commit the crime that she was trying to have them executed for. And not only did she not stop prosecuting them, she refused to release the evidence, even at least one of those times when a judge ordered her to. Why? So that her conviction rate wouldn't go down. That is who the Democrat Party is asking you to throw your vote away for. Now let's talk about the other wing of that plane crash. Let's talk for a moment about Donald Trump. Oh, you've heard of him too. Let's talk about a lifelong crony who has used the power of government to harm everyone around him so that he can profit. Whether we talk about his using eminent domain to force widows to sell their homes to him so that he can build his next failing casino project, or when those casino projects failed, using the bankruptcy courts to unload as much of his debt onto his poor investors and shareholders so that he could walk away with all of the profit. Let's talk about the man who said that he was going to drain the swamp, only to become the king of the swamp creatures. Let's talk about someone who said that he was going to cut spending. Instead, he has spent more money in one term than any other president before him. This year alone, he has signed off on nearly $7 trillion in spending, and he is currently cheerleading for yet another multi-trillion-dollar billionaire bailout by the end of the year. He said that he would end the national debt. Meanwhile, I've never actually met anyone who believed him when he said that, but he said he was going to do it, and instead he has run up more debt, again, in just one term than any other president before him. He said that he would end the wars overseas and bring the troops home. In fact, he recently said again that he was going to end the war in Afghanistan and bring all those troops home after you re-elect him. Then he'll totally do it. He hasn't done it in the last 4 years, but he's going to do it now. Instead, he has put 15,000 more troops serving overseas than were there when he got into office. And of course, he said that he would protect our right to keep and bear arms, and instead has introduced more gun control legislation, more gun control regulations and executive orders than the last 5 presidents before him. And he has cheerled for red flag laws in all 50 states, the type of laws that led to the death of people like Duncan Lemp and others. This is who the Republican Party asked you. Oh, sorry, I'm so sorry. I almost forgot about his running mate. Let me talk as much about Mike Pence as he has demonstrated relevance during this administration. A fly landed on his head. This is who the Republican Party has asked you to throw your vote away for. This is who the Republican machine has told you are your only options. And that if you don't vote for one of them, you're throwing your vote away. Now, I would say that throwing your vote away is voting for the people who created this mess and hoping that they fix it when they continue to make it worse. But that's just my opinion. Now, let's talk about an opportunity not to throw your vote away. Let's talk about Dr. Joe Jorgensen. Let's talk about the reason why Joe Jorgensen wasn't allowed in that debate. It's the same reason they didn't let me in the VP debate. Let's talk about the fact that if the American people had seen an actual sane adult standing between those two clowns who could barely form a coherent sentence between the two of them, and at no point ever actually issued an actual policy change to try to fix the problems that we're facing, and instead kept insulting each other and trying to put the blame on them without ever actually saying what they were going to do. Imagine if instead someone had been standing before them, in between them, who was a brilliant self-made entrepreneur, who had been able to grow businesses and create jobs without ruining people's lives. Someone who has demonstrated that she can pass a cognitive test, which is apparently one of the hurdles you have to cross now. It's sad that that's one of the hurdles, but we jump it with great gusto. Someone who has demonstrated that she can lead from day one Not by taking control from you, but just the opposite, by putting the control and the power and the freedom and the money back in your hands and removing those barriers and burdens. If Joe Jorgensen had been standing between those two clowns while they tried to play their back and forth good cop, bad cop routine and actually demonstrated how we got here and how our common sense libertarian reforms would solve the problems that we're facing, not only would the American people vote libertarian, they'd never vote Republican or Democrat ever again. That's why we've been excluded, and that's why we have to take the message of liberty directly to the American people. Folks, Joe and I are working with the Libertarian Party of Georgia, the Libertarian Party of Savannah, and state and local affiliates across this country. We are working together to build an army for human liberty that is fighting for nothing less than a world set free in our time. And we need your help. If you haven't already done so, I ask you to join the Libertarian Party today. Go to lp.org and join the party today. The Libertarian Party is the only effective bulwark that is working against the Republicrats and their further aims for you and your loved ones. Because let's be very clear, folks, they're not resting on their laurels. They're not okay with the amount of control of your life that they have right now. They're not okay with the level of harm that they've done to you that they've already done. They want to do more. They want it to be even more unaffordable for you to live. They want you to be even more at risk of ending up in jail for something that shouldn't even be a crime to begin with. They want your life to be more difficult so that you are more reliant upon them and so that the cronies who put them in office are that much wealthier as a result. They want to make it worse, and the Libertarian Party is the only party that was able to get on all 50 state ballots plus DC during a pandemic. We have the wherewithal, we have the infrastructure, we have the organization, and we have the dedication of incredible activists such as many of you here across this country. And we ask those of you who have not already joined to join us today. And when you're done doing that, we ask you to go to that table there and ask about joining the Libertarian Party of Georgia, joining your local affiliate, and if you don't have a local affiliate yet, possibly starting one of your own. They'll help you with it. We ask you to join this grassroots movement in the Libertarian Party. We also ask you to go to joe20.com and fill out our volunteer form. We'd love to have you join our team as well. And we ask you to give what you are able to give, because it is the contributions of generous folks like you that allow us to do bus tours like this, to do video ad placement in streaming services and on TV and radio. It's what allows us to take the message directly to the American people, because we know that the crony corporate media will do everything they can to pretend that we don't exist. And unlike our competitors, we don't rob you to pay for our campaigns. You may or may not know this, but the Republicans and Democrats receive something called federal matching funds, which is a really nice way of saying that they rob you in income taxes, because as we know, all taxation is theft. And I know how to do an applause line. They rob you in income taxes to help pay for their campaigns. Hundreds of millions of dollars every election they get. Well, folks, we've never received that. We've never robbed you to pay for our campaigns, and we never will, because we don't believe that we're entitled to your support. We don't believe that we're entitled to your vote. We certainly don't believe we're entitled to your money. We believe that we have to earn it. We believe that if you decide to vote for us and support us, that it's because we have earned it. And if we have earned it, I ask you to give what you are able to do. Here's another part of that we don't get, and that's crony corporate funding. The last time I checked, Donald Trump and Joe Biden had received nearly $500 million, almost $500 million in crony corporate funding so far, and there's still a month left of this campaign. Now, I haven't checked today, but the last time I did check, Joe Jorgensen and I had received exactly $0 and 0 cents in crony corporate funding for two very powerful reasons. Number one, we'd never accept it, and number two, they'd never give it to us, because they know that when Joe and I get elected, when libertarians up and down the ballot across this country get elected, when we get into the halls of power and take the power back and give it to you, their game is over. Their days of being able to saunter into Washington, D.C. and into state and local capitals around the country and write their own blank check and rob you to pay for it and put up regulations and barriers and burdens to make sure that no one can threaten their market share, all that's over. They know that when we take the power back, they won't be considered too big to fail anymore. They'll just be able to fail. If they can't do well, they'll have to fail like anyone else would have to. And frankly, they know that once we get into office, if they want to do well in life, they're going to have to pull themselves up by their bootstraps and live within their means like they've been telling us to do for decades while they rob us of trillions of dollars. They know that when we get into office, that it's